So the Premier League kicks off this weekend, and I wanted to make my predictions as to where each and every single team is going to finish in this year's Premier League season. I've used a website I will link down in the description where you can predict all of the results for every fixture in 38 match days of the Premier League, and I have come up with my ultimate table. I'm going to go through things, give my reasons as to why I think that team will finish there, talk about some of the players in their teams, and ultimately come back to this at the end of the season and see how catastrophically wrong I was. So let's dive in with the team that I think is going to finish bottom of the Premier League table. So guys, we are going to kick things off with Bournemouth, obviously one of the teams to come up out of the Championship via the automatic places. Personally, I just don't think Bournemouth have enough in their squad. They've not really added a huge amount of players, with just 3 players coming in at the time of recording, with the biggest one being 𝘼𝙗𝙤𝙪 from Middlesbrough, who I don't personally think is going to be enough to help them. I don't think they had that Premiership quality when they were in the Championship, and ultimately I haven't seen them add to it since they've been promoted in this summer window so far. Obviously the window is not over just yet, but I think Bournemouth are going to be one of the teams that will struggle and finish in 20th position. So they finished above Bournemouth in the Championship last season, and I'm picking them to finish above them again. I have Fulham as my team in 19th. Now obviously they have made some additions to their team. Kevin Mbabu I actually think is a good little pickup, but obviously some of the players that they have lost, Fabio Carvalho going to Liverpool, I actually think that's a really big loss for Fulham. They've spent in this position before, and ultimately it has not been good enough. So I have Fulham to go down again in 19th position. Are they going to have finally a season where they don't yo-yo? Not for me. Moving into 18th, and this may be a surprise for some people, I have gone for Brentford. Now I think Brentford are potentially going to suffer from some of this second season syndrome, but ultimately I just think there are teams in the Premier League that will do better than Brentford this season. They've made a couple of good additions in terms of Ben Mee, Thomas Strakosha in goal, and Aaron Hickey. £17 million for Aaron Hickey I think is quite a lot of money, and I don't necessarily know if he addresses the needs that they have, because I believe they needed a right back, and Aaron Hickey, according to my Football Manager knowledge, is definitely a left back. So it's going to be interesting to see what Brentford do, but ultimately I have them suffering from that second season syndrome and heading down into the Championship. So let's move on to a team that I think are just about going to survive. So I say just about going to survive, but in my Premier League prediction table, I had them to survive by 10 points, avoiding the drop, but I do have Southampton as the team in 17th. Now, I think their team's okay. I think Joe Aribo is a nice addition from Rangers as well. Along with Romero Lavia from Manchester City, I think that's a good addition. Gavin Bazunu, I don't know what he adds as a backup goalkeeper. I think they've done some good business. Obviously, it's been time for some of the old guard, Fraser Forster, to move on. Shane Long as well, obviously moving on out of the club, having been released in the summer. I just don't think Southampton, it's your year to do anything special. I think it's one of those where if you're not progressing in the Premier League, I ultimately see that as you're regressing. So I think they will survive, and I think it will be comfortable in the end, but I think it's a long, hard season for Southampton fans coming up. Next up, we have Leicester City. Now, Leicester, for me, have an aging squad, and the players that they do have that are really good in that team, James Maddison, they're trying to flog. Wesley Fofana is wanted by Chelsea for a rumoured £80 million at the time of recording. They are the kind of key players in this team. Yes, Jamie Vardy is a proven entity in the Premier League, but he is definitely getting on a little bit now, and they haven't really seemed to bring in the players that I think can really do the job for Leicester and replace the legs that they need, especially in those attacking areas. I think it's going to be a long, hard season for Leicester as well, but ultimately I think they will be able to survive due to a lot of Premier League nous. Moving up the table, we move to the Midlands as we're talking about Aston Villa. Now, Villa have some really big additions to their team in Felipe Coutinho, Diego Carlos. I'm also talking about Boubacar Kamara, who's joined from Marseille on that free transfer. They have had a lot of strengthening, but for some reason, I just don't back them. When I was going through looking at some of the fixtures, I was looking at Villa versus, whoever. and I was having a really tough time picking Villa to win a lot of these matches. I think their team is okay. I think their team is pretty strong, but for some reason I just don't fancy them. Please don't kill me in the comments, Villa fans. So we're up into 14th, and we have the final team that were promoted last season out of the Championship via the playoffs. I'm predicting Nottingham Forest will have a very successful season. They've been pretty understated in some of the business that they've been doing, going around picking up, you know, cheaper players in the current market. I'm talking about the likes of 𝘼𝙗𝙤𝙪. I'm talking the likes of Dean Henderson coming in on loan. Jesse Lingard, obviously, on that free transfer. Neco Williams from Liverpool. I think £17 million is probably a little bit too much for someone like that. But they've been going around doing their business quite quietly, picking people in, bringing people in. And I think their starting 11 is actually pretty darn good. And especially considering the riding of the wave that they've had, obviously, from being bottom of the Championship at some point last season, driving their way up, getting into the playoffs, winning the playoffs. I think they will be able to carry that momentum into the Premier League season, and I really do think Nottingham Forest will be a pleasant surprise in the Premier League this year, and I'm having them finish in 14th, the highest of the promoted teams. Next up is Crystal Palace. Now, Editor Jack, I am sorry I have you finishing in 13th, but ultimately I think Patrick Vieira has done a fantastic job with this core young group of players at Crystal Palace. I'm expecting a big season from 𝘼𝙗𝙪, but ultimately I think the decisive factor is going to be the loss currently of Conor Gallagher, obviously returning back to Chelsea following his loan spell last season. I felt like he was the life hub of that, and that was kind of summed up in that FA Cup semi-final, where Palace just kind of were caught lacking a little bit, obviously, where Gallagher was unable to play against his parent side. At the time of recording, obviously, the final business hasn't been done by Patrick Vieira, and I'm expecting him to bring in at least another 1 or 2 bodies to add to this squad. I think it's going to be a pretty up and down season for Palace, but would you accept 13th in the table? Everton. I have them finishing in 12th. I think the addition of 𝘼𝙗𝙗 is actually a really, really good player coming into this Everton squad. They've got rid of a lot of players here. Obviously, the likes of Richarlison has left, obviously going to Spurs. We'll talk about them a little bit later. But obviously, Richarlison's gone. I've got rid of Fabian Delph. Donny van der Beek's loans over. 𝘼𝙗𝙤𝙪 Sigurdsson, the less said about him, the better. 𝘼𝙗𝙗𝙪. I'm looking through this list of players that they've got rid of, and there's so many players in this team. Obviously, they brought in the likes of 𝘼𝙗𝙗, who we've touched on. James Tarkowski on a free transfer. He was one of the bigger sort of free agent signings available from the Premier League, a tried and tested Premier League defender. I think he will help Everton, but I just don't see them doing anything better, because I think Richarlison is a very big goal threat. Obviously, Dominic Calvert-Lewin is going to have to be fit for the entire season for Everton to do anything well, and personally, I am not a huge fan of Frank Lampard as a manager. The final team in the bottom half of the table then is Brighton. Now, Brighton have been playing some fantastic football under Graham Potter over the last few seasons, and I'm just waiting for something to click there and them to fly up the table, and I think it could be this year. I don't know why I think that. I just think they're going to have a really, really good season. They've been so close in a number of seasons thus far. I think this is the year that things really, really click for Graham Potter and Brighton, and I have them finishing up in 11th. In terms of some of the business that they've done, Kasper Kozłowski, I think is how you say his name, young Polish player. He is fantastic in Football Manager, so I think that's a good pickup for Brighton as well. Obviously, having the young players there. The likes of Basuma leaving them, and potentially Marc Cucurella leaving, will add money into the coffers. Can they use it a little bit before deadline day to strengthen this team? I think they're going to have the money there. I think Cucurella will be a Manchester City player come the end of the deadline, so hopefully they can use it to strengthen in those right areas. And as I said, I have them finishing in 11th. So we move into the top half of the table, and we have Newcastle United. Now, I think Newcastle will obviously be buoyed by the end of the season that they did have under Eddie Howe, one of the best performing runs from sort of January time onwards towards the end of the season. I like the addition of Sven Botman from Lille. I think he will make them a lot better at the back. I also don't mind Nick Pope, but I'm not really sure who is better out of Nick Pope or Dubravka? I'm really not sure. I think they have a decent enough squad, but I'm surprised they haven't actually spent a lot more in this window. Whether or not they've not been able to get their targets because of that Newcastle tax, or whether teams are kind of asking for a little bit too much, or whether or not they're just waiting to see who the targets are come deadline day and sort of the last week of the sort of transfer window. Maybe that's a possibility as well, until they sign someone absolutely huge. And I'm not talking massive name. I think Andrea Bellotti would be a fantastic sort of addition to this Newcastle side. Another sort of person to take the weight off of Callum Wilson in terms of that goal scoring threat. I think they really need that. Until they add that piece, I cannot have them any higher than 10th. In 9th, I have Wolverhampton Wanderers. Now, I think Wolves finished the season quite nicely themselves towards the back end of last season. They have brought in Nathan Collins from Burnley, another player been plucked from that Burnley team. And also they've added 𝘼𝙗𝙤𝙪 𝙈𝙚. They've converted his loan into a permanent signing. And they will get Adama Traore back, who actually, from what I've read, seem to have a pretty good time over in Barcelona. So maybe he will rediscover a little bit of form whilst at Wolves this season. In terms of some of the other players that they have returned from loan, I'm not really sure about whether or not they will actually improve this team or not. But I think Wolves have enough about them. As I was going through some of the stuff as well, coming into the fixtures, Wolves versus Aston Villa, for some reason I was backing Wolves. I don't know what it is about them. I have them finishing in 9th, and I think they will have a pretty solid season. Next up, we have Leeds United. From narrowly avoiding relegation last season, I think Jesse Marsch is doing fantastic work here. Obviously, they sold the likes of Raphinha, but that has enabled them, and Calvin Phillips as well. There's probably another one I should mention, but they have been able to reinvest some of that cash, bringing in Brendan Aronson from RB Salzburg. I think he's a brilliant player. Tyler Adams from RB Leipzig, again, a very good player. Mark Roca, a player I love in Football Manager. I think he can add a little bit of stability. I think Mark Roca and Calvin Phillips are similar players. Yes, I think Calvin Phillips is a better player, but Mark Roca can really do a lot of what Calvin Phillips has done. Like Calvin Phillips, 95% of Calvin Phillips is what I'm probably going to say. I think he's very good at breaking the ball down, breaking the play down, and then distributing into those offensive positions. That's what I've seen Calvin Phillips do a lot. He absolutely ripped my Bristol City team apart when I saw Leeds play at Ashton Gate a few seasons ago when they were in the Championship, and I think Mark Roca can really do that. I like the players that he's brought in. Sinisterra, I think, is again another good replacement for Raphinha on the wings. He can play on either side. I'm looking forward to seeing what Leeds United do this season, because I think they're going to be a very big surprise package. Next up, we have West Ham United, who I think will be doing another good season under David Moyes, and I really like the addition of Gianluca Scamacca. I think he's a fantastic player, really nice big man coming in from Sassuolo for a reported £30.5 million. I really like him as a player. In FM, he's brilliant, wins the ball, good at finishing, great in the air as an aerial threat as well. And we all know David Moyes and West Ham love their set pieces, guys. So I think Scamacca will fit in fantastically well to this team. Obviously, there's potentially some other business that they may do, but I think they will be suffering a little bit from the loss of Mark Noble following his retirement. I think he's a fantastic person to have in that dressing room, and I'm wondering whether someone like a Declan Rice will step up and really take hold of that mantle as the leader for this team moving forward, if he stays as a West Ham player. Arsenal. Now, I like a lot of the business that Arsenal have done this summer. Obviously, bringing in Gabriel Jesus and Zinchenko from Manchester City. Fabio Vieira, again, another player who has a lot of potential in the world of Football Manager. Will that translate onto the field in real life football? I think some of the moves that Mikel Arteta has done have been fantastic. I think the versatility that Arsenal now have in that front line, despite it being very young, I think they can be dangerous. They're going to be mixing and weaving in and out, left, right and centre. And Gabriel Jesus has started like an absolute house on fire in this team in pre-season. Can Arsenal hit the ground running, unlike last season where they suffered multiple defeats in the first couple of games? Can Arsenal start really strong and push themselves on? I think they're going to finish the season pretty well, but ultimately I think the age of their squad is probably going to be what undoes them. I think in a year or two this Arsenal team are going to be sort of fighting it out for those Champions League places, but I think this season, the 2022-2023 season, is just a step too far for them. Into the top 5 now, and just missing out on Champions League football, we have Manchester United. Now, obviously, Ten Hag is coming into the club, and he's trying to get that transfer business done. Christian Eriksen, I think, is an elite tier signing for Manchester United. Lisandro Martinez and Tyrell Malacia from the Eredivisie, I'm not really sure how they are going to fit in. I think Martinez is probably going to actually play a lot. Malacia, I'm not really sure if he will get in past Luke Shaw, but the competition for places at left back is definitely welcome. I really don't think Manchester United are done with their business so far. Expect a fantastic season out of Jadon Sancho. Very disappointing last season, in my opinion. I had him in Fantasy Premier League the whole season, and he barely did anything. I will be picking him up again this year to see how he does get on, because I think he's going to have a very good season in Ten Hag's system. Being told a little bit more what is expected from him on the field, I think is going to be very good. Ultimately, I don't see them breaking into the top 4, because I do think there are 4 better teams than Manchester United in this year's season. But if Ronaldo stays as well, he is worth at least 20 goals in this team, and I think they can come close to the top 4, but ultimately I don't have them doing it just yet. So the team in 4th securing that final Champions League group stage place is Chelsea. Now, boy, do Chelsea need some centre-backs. After Rudiger and Christensen have both left the club, at the time of recording, they have missed out on multiple centre-back options for this team. The most recently, 𝘼𝙗𝙤𝙪 going to Barcelona. Somehow Barcelona are signing players because of selling their TV deal. It is absolute madness what's going on at that club. But Koundé offering to go to Barca over Chelsea, interesting. I think also Chelsea may struggle in terms of where the goals are going to come. Obviously, Romelu Lukaku has moved back to Italy to be at Inter Milan. I'm not really sure where the main focal point of their attack is going to be. I like the addition of Raheem Sterling. I think he's a brilliant player to bring in, but I'm not really sure how that's going to fit when you need a central goal scorer. Timo Werner potentially hasn't been that. Christian Pulisic is a bit hit and miss. Are they going to play Kai Havertz as a false 9 for the entire season? He had some success there, obviously scored the Champions League winning goal 2 seasons ago. I don't know if he is that main guy to be up front as a focal point. Yes, okay, he can play a false 9, but I think his best position would be playing just off of somebody, having that main man to be up top. Obviously, they are going to have someone like Conor Gallagher returning from Crystal Palace after his very, very good year on loan at Palace. I think he can be another energetic option for them in central midfield, and I really do hope they give him some game time that he really, really does deserve. So that means we move into the top 3, and I have Tottenham as the team finishing in 3rd. Now, I'm not normally very complimentary about Tottenham on this channel, but I have to say I think Antonio Conte has done some brilliant business this summer, bringing in the likes of Lenglet, Basuma, Richarlison, of course. I also have to talk about Ivan Perisic, who, yes, he's a left wing back, guys. I think he's going to be very good for this system and the way that Antonio Conte is going to try and play for Tottenham. I really like the business that they've done this year, and I think they are going to come close to Liverpool. I don't know whether they are going to come close to Manchester City. Just a little bit of a spoiler there for how I think the top 2 are going to finish. I'm really happy with the business that they've done. I think it's brilliant. I like the Conte factor. I really think he's going to be a sort of... I don't know how to say this. I really think he's going to be like a disciplinarian. I think they're going to play fantastically defensive football. I think they're going to be really, really solid at the back. As I said, I think Basuma adds them a little bit of meat and grit in that central midfield as well, as a bit of a ball winner and someone who has the legs to go up and down the field. I really do like what Conte has done with Tottenham, and I think they will finish in 3rd place. So I'm going to talk about these two at the same time, but ultimately I have Manchester City winning the Premier League throughout the course of the season. I think they are the best team with Liverpool coming in second. 𝘼𝙗𝙤𝙪 𝙤𝙗 coming in to Liverpool I think is a very good signing, but I don't know whether Klopp is going to blood him and play him straight away. I think he's probably going to stick with Luis Diaz on the left, Salah on the right, and then Firmino through the middle to start the Premier League season. But ultimately, whether or not Núñez hits the ground running like Luis Diaz did coming in from Portugal, which I think he's very much capable of doing. I think he's a perfect fit for the Liverpool system and how they want to play with that high intense press, because he has the physicality to do that. He's fast, he's agile, he's strong as well, he's good in the air, he's great on the floor. I think he is a good addition, but he's not that proven entity that Sadio Mane is. That will be a big loss for Liverpool, obviously, with him going to Bayern Munich. And I know he didn't have a great performance in that Community Shield where Liverpool did lift the trophy, but Erling Haaland is the difference to this team. Manchester City have gone through this summer, and I think they've spent fantastically well. They lost Fernandinho. They've replaced him with Calvin Phillips. They've sent out a couple players as well. Spent some, let Raheem Sterling go, let Zinchenko go, Gabriel Jesus, and they've replaced him with Julian Alvarez, who I think is an elite tier player in a couple seasons time. He can do what Gabriel Jesus did in that Manchester City team, in my opinion. And obviously, the main man, Erling Haaland. I think this guy is going to make a massive difference to Manchester City, and I have them scoring over 100 goals in the Premier League. So without any further ado, let's talk about our Premier League table. That is it up on the screen right now. I have Manchester City winning the division with 100 points. I have them winning 32 matches, drawing 4 and losing 2. Scoring over 100 goals, I think 110 goals for Manchester City in my predictions. Obviously, there we have Liverpool, Tottenham and Chelsea rounding off that top 4, with Tottenham being the best defensive team in the league, in my opinion. Then we have Manchester United and Arsenal, and then obviously, as you can see, we work our way down, and then we have our bottom 3 of Brentford, Fulham and AFC Bournemouth. So guys, that is how I have the Premier League table looking coming towards the end of the season. Let me know down in the comments who you think is going to win the Premier League, and also who you think is going to be relegated from the Premier League. If you fancy entering a competition to see how your predictions stack up compared to mine, I am running a competition via this website in my Discord channel. I want you guys to fill in your fixtures, how you think everyone's going to get on, and then we're going to talk about who is the closest, and there will be a prize for the person who gets the closest table to real life come the end of the season. If you have enjoyed this video, guys, check out this one popping up here. It's something Football Manager related, not really football related, but I hope you guys enjoy it.